So the list starts.
Telencephalon.
The telencephalon, well, we know just, of course, the cerebrum, the hemispheres of the brain, right? So telencephalon, cerebrum, equivalent terms.
Diencephalon.
The diencephalon, well, it's definitely split in half. And we saw the area, the round thalamus, the pineal gland. We're all in this area, the diencephalon.
Epithalamus.
The epithalamus is the superior part of the diencephalon. So specifically where you have the pineal body, that's part of the superior diencephalon, the epithalamus.
And then the thalamus again.
The thalamus, the round circular thalamus.
Hypothalamus.
And then hypothalamus, we're looking at this area right here.
And then mesencephalon.
Mesencephalon, so mesencephalon, you can definitely see from the back here, the bumps of the corpora quadrigemina. Or I think this side's a little better. So the corpora quadrigemina with those two bumps, the colliculi. And you notice this little groove right into here. That's the cerebral aqueduct, the cerebral peduncle. So all this area here is the mesencephalon.
Metencephalon.
Metencephalon, so this bump here, the pons and the cerebellum. Metencephalon, pons and cerebellum.
Myelencephalon.
And myelencephalon, the medulla oblongata and the space of the fourth ventricle.
And then the meninges, so duramater.
So this is really nice duramater here. This has been dissected out. And keep in mind, it used to kind of sit like so, right?
Mm-hmm.
So right in the midline, the next term.
Falx cerebri.
So you see this little ridge right here? It's on the deep side of the duramater. That's the falx cerebri.
And tentorium cerebelli.
And the tentorium cerebelli are now these two pieces here that used to tuck into the transverse fissure. It used to tuck in like so. It's been pulled out. So this is a good piece for the whole duramater. And the ridge right down the midline, falx cerebri. The two sections on the side, tentorium cerebelli.
Okay, and then arachnoid.
Arachnoid mater. So it's really this shiny layer at the surface. And in fact, see if we could peel some of it up a little bit.
No.
Or the best place is when you started to separate the hemispheres. You just have to poke in there. There we go. I got the probe under that kind of clear membrane. So that's the arachnoid mater. Now I'm kind of pulling up.
Oh, that's cool.
I'm just kind of separating more of it. And you can't do this at all with the pyomater. So in fact, if I just wiggle it around more, is that the next term?
Yeah.
All right, let me just wiggle this a little more. So definitely I'm starting to lift up the arachnoid mater. And you just cannot do this with the pyomater. It follows right on the bulges and grooves. So if I just tear through a piece of that now, can we cut that? And I mentioned if you thought you were looking right at the brain, that's just the brain wrapped in the pyomater. This is so thin and delicate. So we can remove the dura and the arachnoid mater. But if you try to remove pyomater, you're just damaging the brain. You're just ripping through the cortex at that point. Okay?
Cerebral hemispheres.
So the two halves, of course, of the telencephalon, the hemispheres.
Cerebellum.
Cerebellum, it's also been sliced in half here.
And fissures.
Longitudinal fissure,
Yeah.
well, that's where we split it. So it's been cut right down the longitudinal fissure.
Transverse fissure.
Transverse fissure, where you see separating the cerebrum from the cerebellum, this groove. And we pulled the tentorium out of the transverse fissure.
And gyri and sulci.
So on the telencephalon, the bulges, the gyri, and the grooves, the sulci.
And then corpus callosum.
Corpus callosum, so again, you split the hemispheres and you have to start to cut through the corpus callosum. But since we got the hemisphere here, pointing to that white matter arch right across here, corpus callosum. Corpus callosum.
And then the vermis.
The vermis, so that's in the middle of the cerebellum, just the bulge right down the midline of the cerebellum, the vermis.
Olfactory bulbs.
Olfactory bulbs. And did you have both of them over here? Okay, so the olfactory bulbs. So olfaction, you know, the nasal cavity, and we have a bit of the ethmoid bone, this really delicate bone here. And we started out, just want to get the correct orientation. So the olfactory bulbs are found inside of that bone structure, and you guys had to gently pull it out. And then now you have some really large olfactory bulbs here for this animal, the sheep.
And that's the cribriform plate, right?
And yeah, ethmoid bone, it was sitting on that cribriform plate region. So we want to keep that.
Olfactory tract.
And from the bulbs, you just follow it back to the tract.
Optic chiasm.
The optic chiasm, so a bit of it's still right here, or got it really shown well in this section. So this, of course, used to sit right about here. And we have really nicely isolated the side here, optic nerve. And of course, where the two optic nerves meet there in the center, that's the optic chiasm. And there used to be all this fat and muscle, that's what we trimmed off. We learned all of that muscle, the rectus oblique muscles, there's fat around the eyeball, and we just trimmed it off to get to the optic nerves, and they connect in the middle, the optic chiasm.
Hypothalamus from like a posterior view.
Okay, so it's really nice here now.
Or,
So the circular area here is the thalamus, and then you just have to go slightly inferior, and you're right in here to the area of the hypothalamus, or this piece. Yeah, right in here, hypothalamus. And the reason why I picked this piece, you have a pituitary gland. Here, this is the only one that still has it. Find where they had that at. Yeah, so we have the pituitary gland here, and if I just pull that down, they even have a bit of the infundibulum still intact, going up to the hypothalamus.
okay.
So hypothalamus, infundibulum, and then the pituitary gland
Can you point out the hypothalamus again?
right here.
And then infundibulum?
Infundibulum,
Okay.
and then on to the pituitary gland. They're all connected. So thalamus, hypothalamus, infundibulum, pituitary gland.
Mammillary body.
The mammillary body, so from this side, that's going to be in the way. Or here's even better, actually. The pituitary gland, even a bit of infundibulum, you see it's still connected up
Oh wow.
and on to the hypothalamus. So mammillary body, we're looking at just this tiny little area right here.
And cerebral peduncles.
Cerebral peduncles. Okay, so we're in the mesencephalon area, and it's this more ventral area right here. Cerebral peduncles.
Pons.
The pons is the bulge right here. So now in the metencephalon, the pons.
And then medulla oblongata.
Medulla oblongata, of course, down to here.
Basilar artery.
And that's one that we'll omit, because that would have came off with meninges. So you'll ignore the sheep brain, basilar artery.
Corpora quadrigemina.
Okay, so when you pull the cerebellum down, you can see these two bumps here and here, or even just turning it to the side. This is the area of the corpora quadrigemina, just posterior to the pons, corpora quadrigemina.
And can we see all four of them? the superior and inferior.
Let's do this. So this is, does that match that side? Okay. All right, putting it all together and pulling down the cerebellum. You can see those 4 bulges right in there. That's all the quadrigimina.
Turn it this way.
Yeah, those 4 bulges, the corpora quadrigimina. The superior bulges on each side make up the superior colliculi, and the inferior two, the inferior colliculi. Okay?
Okay, we have the corpus callosum already. Septum pellucidum.
Septum pellucidum's been destroyed. Like, in fact, I can put the probe into this space because the septum pellucidum's been destroyed. So let's see if we have, this is a good one here. We just have the remnant. As soon as I pull at it, it's going to tear. It's a problem. So we already said the basilar artery, and the septum pellucidum is another one. As soon as I pull at it, it's just going to tear. It's so delicate. But the reason why we can see into the ventricle is because the septum pellucidum now, I'm just kind of tearing that apart.
The
Okay.
lateral ventricle.
Into the lateral ventricle, okay?
And then choroid plexus.
Choroid plexus. So you guys pulled one of those out, right? Yeah. In here. Just want to make sure I'm pointing at the right thing now. That came out of there? Okay, there we go. So you guys remove this from the lateral ventricle. There, I'm just scooping it out again. The choroid plexus. So it's just a capillary cluster that would have been on the edge of that lateral ventricle, choroid plexus, kind of poking it around right there.
Oh, wow.
Or is it better on this one?
No. Not necessarily.
Okay, choroid plexus.
And then fornix.
The fornix, okay, so let's point out the corpus callosum again. Is that superior white matter? And then this inferior portion right here I'm running across. Get my finger out the way. That is the fornix, and superior to it, the corpus callosum.
Thalamus again. Interthalamic adhesion.
That one again, we cut through it, so we would have severed that structure. Okay.
Pineal gland.
Pineal gland, this is a nice one. So using the thalamus, the circle as a reference, just going posterior, right there is the pineal gland.
Superior colliculus.
And that's right there, superior colliculus, right by that pineal gland. Superior colliculus.
The aqueduct of the midbrain.
This is a nice one. I could put the probe actually right into the aqueduct. And you notice the aqueduct is between the corpora quadrigimina and the cerebral peduncles. Just between those two, that's the cerebral aqueduct. So it's going right through there.
Can we see the central canal?
No, because you need more of the spinal cord to see that.
What about the fourth ventricle?
Fourth ventricle, you got the cerebellum, the medulla oblongata, and the space between. So that's the end of the list?
No, well, there's a couple more from
Okay.
the cerebellum.
Let's keep going.
So cerebellum,
Cerebellum, of course, all right here.
the arbor vitae.
And slice through the white matter of the cerebellum, the white matter branches, arbor vitae.
Folia.
The folia are just the folds. So if I kind of pull them apart, you get a better view. The folds on the cerebellum, the folia, like the bulging folds.
And that's it, pretty much.
Okay, so for the sheep brain, we destroyed the septum pellucidum as part of the dissection. So on the exam, we'll have sheep brains, but we can't do the septum pellucidum, the interthalamic adhesion, the basilar artery. Those will be the ones not included for the exam, because those are structures we had to destroy as part of this. Okay?
Can you say those one more time?
So interthalamic adhesion, basilar artery, septum pellucidum,
In the central canal, right?
and central canal and the spinal cord as well. So those 4. And I have some labeled photographs. They're right there now.